Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. Not be all and truly save that thou art. Thou my best thou, by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence my light. Be thou my wisdom, be thou my true word. I ever with thee, and thou with me, Lord. Thou my great Father, and I thy true Son. Thou in me dwelling, and I with thee one. Be thou my battle shield, sword for the fight. Be thou my dignity, thou my delight. Thou my soul's shelter, and thou my highest tower. Raise thou me heavenward, O God of my power. Riches I need of torment empty ways. Thou my inheritance through all my days. Thou and thou only, the first in my heart. I give, O heaven, my treasure, the Christ be with you, Christ within you, Christ behind you, Christ before you, Christ beside you, Christ to win you, Christ to comfort and restore you, Christ in you.
Look up there. Say, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our online service. Once again, coming from our kitchen. James decided to join me today. Last week we talked about this, that at the moment church is where you are. And I don't want that just to be an idea that kind of comes and goes and yeah, that would be nice, but really we know what church is. It's a meeting and a place we go to. Church is where you are. Church was here was our tagline last week. And I just wanted to remind you of that this week, that wherever you are, wherever you're watching this from, that is where church is. Church is the people. It's you who's watching this. It's us together watching this, but it's people. It's you that matters. I just want to start by reminding you of that and affirming that of you, that you are the church, we are the church. And although we are scattered, we still remain that. That is still true of us. And we're going to be exploring that a bit more this week and looking at what that means, particularly in relation to how we reach out to those around us, how we connect with those around us and those who are close to us, as those who have been scattered across the county, across the country, into our homes, but are then perfectly placed. That's what we looked at last week, perfectly placed to be on mission with God. If you're brand new to this and you've just joined in for the first time, it's great to have you here with us. My name's Dean and I'm the pastor at Leicester Baptist Church. We've had some developments this week. You've all been following with great interest the mice gate situation in our house and whether we've caught the mice. We haven't caught them, but this week Keith went over to the church. He's been doing lots of work and getting it up and nice and clean and painted.
In space.
It's in space, is it? Keith has been doing lots of things over there, and he found a squirrel running around the church, and so I'll put up a picture of this guy. So we're getting close to Noah's Ark. We've nearly got all the animals, but still got a few more to collect. I don't know what's going on. Nature's taken over. But there we go, more things going on. Now, I'd just like to update you about where we are as a church in terms of the lockdown. Did you notice the edit there? A little spot the difference? See, that's how we do it in the movie business. Just where we are in going forward, and the honest answer is we still don't know. We haven't been getting any advice or insight or tips on what it might look like for us and how we might be going forward. And so still the word I think for us is perseverance. And it's making the most of this opportunity, and it's working out how to be the church in this situation. I'm so grateful for those who are all doing this for just the church. For you guys, loving each other, communing with each other, talking with each other, encouraging one another, praying with each other, and I just encourage you to keep doing that because it's how it's going to be. We don't know when it's going to change, and when it does come in, whether it's going to look anything close to what we're familiar with. So as I said at the start, this idea of being the church isn't just a flippant thing that we pass on by. I think it's something we need to truly just embrace with all that we are, and to persevere in this as we work out what that means for us. I went for a run this week and I went up by Aldi, and there's a big hill next to it. Now obviously I only ever listen to sermons and my audio Bible when I'm running, but somehow my playlist slipped onto classic rock, but that's another story. So I was running up by Aldi, and as I came to the hill, this song came on. That's a good one, isn't it? That's a good one for running. You can all admit that gets you going, getting up the hill. That's what I needed. Yeah, come on, Eye of the Tiger. And as I got halfway up the hill, the last final push, the song ended, and I thought, right, what's going to be next? I need something else, something motivational to get me this last bit up the hill. Could have been Queen, Don't Stop Me Now, something with a bit of oomph to it. But what came on, in fact, was this.
I'd like to build the world a home and furnish.
Now, nothing against that song, but it's not the song that's going to get you to the top of the hill. It's not the soundtrack, it's not the background music that you need for that final push to keep running your race and persevere. And so it wasn't particularly helpful. But it made me think about this time, and the question that came to my mind was, what's the soundtrack for you at the moment? What's the background music? Because the hill's there and it's hard to do, but it's easier when you got the right backing music. It's easier when you got the right soundtrack to push you on, the right focus, the right drive to keep you going. And I think that's what our worship is about. It'd be very easy to put out just a message each week, but we include worship as part of it, and we include these songs from around the world as part of it, as kind of a backing track, as a soundtrack to keep you persevering, to keep you running, for you to engage with, embrace, and run to the beat of. I'm so grateful for our music team, and we'll try and work out if we can do maybe an outdoor 6 maximum gathering recording of some more songs at some point. But in the meantime, we still have the songs that they've performed, and Mark and Eileen have got together with their resources and recorded a few new songs, ones that we as a church aren't familiar with, that we're going to start to include every now and then in our services, that I hope will again become part of the backing track, part of the soundtrack, part of the focus that keeps us going and persevering during this time. Beyond that, like I said, there isn't anything else that we have. There isn't any more advice that we can give. We just keep going and keep trying to be creative and intentional in finding ways to be the church, not just sitting around waiting for when things go back, but embracing this now. We are scattered, but we believe we're scattered for a purpose. We are separate, but we believe God is in it, and He is in us to work out His good purposes through all things in this situation. And so I'm just going to pray, and then we'll spend some moments listening to these songs and worshiping together as the soundtrack to keep us going at this time. Father, I thank you. I thank you for this situation. Not for it in terms of the havoc that it's wreaking, not for it in terms of the pain and the suffering and the grief that's being experienced, but for the awareness that you are with us, that we have been sent to it. I thank you that you've entrusted us with that. I thank you that you see fit to call your people to shine as lights in the midst of it. And I thank you that you see more capability in us. You honour us more than we would even honour ourselves. And I pray that we would respond rightly to that. Lord, I pray today we would see more of your heart. When we think about the chaos this week, the chaos caused by the virus, but also the chaos of the hurt and the injustice and the suffering, the racism and the pain and the neglect that just characterizes this world, characterizes us. And I pray today, Father, we would see your heart and we would not be the same for it. Change us, Father. Teach us to cooperate with you in whatever way we need to, that your Spirit might have his way, that your kingdom might come and your will may be done in our hearts and in our lives. We ask, Spirit, speak. Show us what isn't surrendered to you. Show us what we're holding back. Show us where we resist. May we offer it freely to you. May we leave behind the old dead ways and step into life. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Open the eyes of the blind. There's no one
So 2 weeks ago we looked at the idea of inviting people, and we're going to dig a bit deeper on that today, into what people are being invited to. And last week we looked at being the church being sent, and those two things go together. Sent out to bring in, come and see, go and tell. Those two things come together in the command of Jesus: go make disciples of all nations, and announce this news, proclaim the good news. All these things, they are going out to bring in to something. And today I want to really just focus on what it is we're bringing people into, and then, as I say, to dig a bit deeper into what that invite looks like. And so we're going to be looking at 3 stories that Jesus tells back to back. He tells them in Luke chapter 15. I'll just read them and then we'll pick them apart. He starts off and it says, now in verse 1, now the tax collectors and sinners were all together, gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. So this is the context. Jesus has come and he's got a reputation for being the Messiah, the one who's going to set things right and resolve things and set people free, but he's not acting like the Pharisees think he should. He's welcoming sinners and eating with them. And so Jesus responds to them and he's speaking to them, and that's something to bear in mind. He's speaking to them and he tells this story. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in an open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbours together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost sheep. I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. The second story. Suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and her neighbours together and says, rejoice with me, I found my lost coin. In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Third story. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandal on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He is lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. So let's just begin with that opening line, because I think that really sets the scene and points us in the direction we need to be looking. It says, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered about Jesus. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. There is a view in their mind that there are religious people and non-religious people, that there are good people and bad people, that there are believers and non-believers, and there is a clear dividing line between them. That one should never touch the other, and one should never mix with the other, and yet here is Jesus doing just that. And it introduces that there is a difference in Jesus' perception of other people. A difference in how Jesus looks at other people, a difference in the way he treats other people, the way he interacts with other people, that is different to anything they've seen before. In fact, it's this idea that Jesus introduced that really got him put on the cross, that people matter more than all the religious paraphernalia that they've been used to. Now that may seem perhaps more familiar to us, but it's still part of our culture, that there are holy things and there may be holy people, but they are a different class. And what Jesus introduces here is that people matter to God. That this idea that was brand new for his time, and maybe it's familiar to us, but it was brand new, that people are holy and sacred. That you could go to the place where the cross was put on the ground, and you could stand in the tomb that Jesus was buried in, and you could go to the Holy of Holies and the spot where the Ark of the Covenant was placed, and you could go to St. Peter's and you could go to St. Paul's, and you would never be in a place more holy than the person who's next to you or yourself. That you are the holiest place on earth. You are the set apart, the most precious thing on this earth that God values more than anything else. The Pharisees didn't get this. There are holy people in holy places, but Jesus says, no, everyone is. That everyone is precious in God's sight. And these people say, well, this man claims to come from God, he claims to speak for God, and yet he doesn't seem to be concerned with our temples, he doesn't have any respect for our history, he doesn't pay any regard to our traditions, he doesn't wash like we wash, he just seems concerned with these lowlifes, these reprobates. He doesn't care for the things that we care about. He seems to care for people. And that's the case. Jesus introduces there is something of greater concern. And each of these stories, you find that there is a concern for the one rather than the crowd. That the crowd, we have the idea the crowd is more important. If I lost one sheep, but I had 99, I might say, well, that's a shame, but I'll count my losses. If I lose a coin, but I've got 9 others, well, I've still got £9 left. That's not too bad. If I lost a son, that might be more serious. But even then, there are people that you and I quite happily write off, that we dismiss, that we count as hopeless, and Jesus says that isn't how God treats them. But notice that while Jesus says that, he also takes it a step further and says not only does God count them as precious, but he treats them all differently. Notice the sheep wanders off. He doesn't make a choice, he just kind of gets distracted. He sees grass that's a bit greener, or he forgets that the herd has moved on, and he's wandered off. And in that case, he says the shepherd goes out, finds him, carries him home joyfully. Now we can quibble over whether you do it joyfully or with a muttering under your breath, but Jesus goes and finds him. He says he carries him home. He treats him as a wanderer, as one who's got himself lost and doesn't know it, and yet brings him back. The coin is different. The coin doesn't make a choice. The coin doesn't get distracted. The coin is lost by the actions of the person. The woman has lost the coin. And as much as I like to believe that my keys must have legs because they're never where I think they are, the truth is that I misplace it, that I have got it lost. And in that case, the woman searches diligently, clears everything out, reorganizes herself in order to find what is lost. The son, again, is different. He rebels. He makes a choice to walk away. And in that case, the father doesn't run after him. The father waits expectantly and hopefully for his son to return, to come to his senses, as the story says, and then to embrace him when he does. Each one is lost, but they're all lost differently. And when you and I think of the people around us, we are all different. I don't think this just talks about non-Christians or people who aren't Christian. I think this talks about all of us. We all get lost at different times, and even when we've come to faith, we all can find ourselves far from the heart of God, and there are different reasons for that. Some wander just because they get distracted. The cares of this world and the concerns, and in those situations, it's for us to go after them and to carry them back. To say, hey, did you realize that you've gone away? Do you realize that you're far away? Can I walk back with you? Can I bring you back? Can I turn you back to this? For others, they've been lost because of the actions of other people, because of someone's neglected them, or someone's overlooked them, or someone's misplaced them, or hurt them, or done something, and they've been lost through the actions of another. In those situations, they're looked for, but looked for differently. There is a carefulness about it. There is a thoughtfulness about it. There is a retracing your steps, and where did I put it, and where could it be, as they try to find them and bring them back. The son, again, he rebels, and the father waits, but he doesn't just sit around doing nothing. He waits expectantly, hopefully his eyes are on the road, waiting for the time when the son will come back. And I'm sure in your life you can think of people who are far from the heart of God, and how perhaps we've tried to blanket it and just treat them all in the same way. But if we love them and value them as individuals and precious, then we treat each one as one. as who they are in their situation and tailor your response to them. Think about what it is that they need at this time. 3 different responses to 3 different people. And maybe that's enough for you today to take and to just think through. How am I going to respond to the people that are around me? How am I going to treat, how am I going to value them as ones and not just as a blanket kind of unbeliever category or just far from the heart? Like I said, I don't think this is just unbeliever believers. I think there are Christians who have wandered. There are Christians who have got lost. There are Christians who have rebelled. You notice in all of them that they don't stop being what they are. One is still the shepherd's sheep. One is still the coin, the property of the woman. One is still the father's son. They haven't lost that. They're just living outside of the heart of God. They're living far away from the heart of God for them. And it's the heart of God that we want to bring them back to. You notice there are 3 different lost things, and they're all lost differently, and they're all brought back differently. But when they're back, where they find themselves is in every story exactly the same. The sheep comes back, the shepherd gets his friends and throws a celebration. The coin is found, the woman gets her friends and throws a celebration. The son comes back, the father turns around, shouts to his servants and throws a celebration. In every single one, the heart that they are brought back to is a party. The thing that we bring people to, the thing we invite them to, the thing we wander to carry them back to, and we reflect on to find them and bring them to, the thing that we wait expectantly for them to come back to is a party. It's a celebration of love over what God counts as precious people. It's a celebration of joy over those that God values more than anything else. It's an exuberant overflow of compassion and generosity and grace for those that God counts as His. As far as they have gone, they are His, and He delights when they are back with Him. That's what we get to come back to. But that's what we're inviting people to. I said there were 3 stories. That's not technically right. There is a 4th story. After the son has come back, Jesus carries on the story. And it says, meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And there the story ends. See, the story isn't really told for the sake of the sheep, for the sake of the coin, for the sake of the son that rebels. Although we can learn from that and take insights from that, the story is told for the older brother. That's how it starts, the Pharisees who are grumbling. And the question is left hanging. We don't know if he comes back in, we don't know if he returns, but the question is, will he join the party too? Will he celebrate too? And that's the question that all 3 stories are meant to lead towards for you and for I. Have you forgotten to join the party? Have you forgotten that this celebration is not just for them, but it's for you? That everything that they have is also everything that you have. That you are a child, and if you are a child, then everything that God has is yours, and that you can celebrate with him at any moment. The older son is still in the house, but he too is far from the heart of God. And the question comes to us, have we forgotten the celebration, the party, the overflowing, abundant joy of God over you and I as also precious? Because if we have, then we will always fail to treat others in that way. We'll always fail to invite them to that because we're not really sure what we're inviting them to. We're inviting them to something that's actually just a bit boring, and inviting them to something that's a bit of a chore, and inviting them to something that doesn't really doesn't deliver what it promises. That's what the son says. He says, well, I've lived in your house, you've never let me celebrate, and I've worked for you and I've slaved for you, and you never do anything for me. And the father says, well, at any moment you could have had it. At any moment, everything I had was yours. At every moment, I was with you. At every moment, you could have taken it and we would have celebrated the biggest party. It's you that put yourself outside of that. It's you that failed to live in that. Perhaps it's true for us too. My sister went a few years ago travelling around the world, and she went to the Philippines, and they found lodging with some people, and they were Christians. My sister isn't a Christian, and over there they're a bit more forceful. So every morning they'd wake up and say, Joe, Tanya, today are you Christians? And they'd say, no, not today. And then they'd say, today are you Christians? And they'd say, no, not today. And they asked them about our culture, and they said, well, do you go to church? And they said, no, we don't go to church. And they said, are there no churches around you? And they said, no, there's loads of churches around. There's a church on every road nearly. They're all over the place. And they sort of stood back and said, there are churches near you, but you don't go to church. And they said, no, in our culture, that tends to be the way things are. You don't go to church. And for them, what they couldn't understand was, why would you not want to go and gather and celebrate being forgiven? Why would you not want to join a place that has a party celebration over the grace and goodness of God in your life? Why, even if you didn't believe it, why would you not want to be a part of that? And I think we've probably lost some of that. Party isn't the word people would use to describe Christians or church. Celebration, abundance isn't what they were describing, yet Jesus in every story says this is the heart. Everything else is different, the lost person is different, the way they're brought back is different, but the same consistent thing is the heart of God, which is always a celebration for every single one. A celebration because of the value and desire he has for every single one. And the question that comes at the end is, how's your theology of parties? And are you willing to share that with others? How are you viewing others because of the way you view yourself? How are you treating others because of the way you think God has treated you? And God is inviting you and I to be people in our community that announce the party is there waiting for you to join. And if we need to carry you back, we'll do that. If we need to apologize and rectify something for you to be found, we'll do that. If we need to wait expectantly and prayerfully and give you your time, then we'll do that too. But the goal is always the heart of God, the celebration that he has over us. Or we just become indifferent. Or we stop seeing others as precious in the sight of God. This last few weeks with George Floyd and the horrific scenes that we've seen of a life taken without cause, the anger and the frustration that's been felt and expressed because of that comes back to this idea that you and I fail to treat people as the beloved, precious gifts of God that they are. As I said, each one, the sheep that's lost, the coin that's lost, the son that's lost, none of them stop being what they are. And they still continue to be precious and valued and significant in the sight of God. And yet when we fail to do that, we get what we've seen. We get racism. We get prejudice. We get arrogance. We get distant. We get denial. We get despair. And quite poignantly, what this points us to is that the answer may be in better systems, and if we can promote them, we can. The answer may be in better politics, and if we can support that and vote for that, then we will. The answer may be in better financial institutions and processes, and if we can support that, then we can. The answer may be in better education, and if we can promote that and enforce that, then we will. But the answer really comes when you understand the heart of God for you, to the point where it cannot be contained any longer in you, but it just overflows into others. That the dream of God over your life is not come to church and find a place to volunteer. The dream of God over you is that you come to find his heart, and that it makes you fully alive in a way that cannot be contained but spills contagiously, spreads hope to a hurting community, brings good news to the poor and freedom for prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, and sets the oppressed free and proclaims the Lord's favour to all who will hear it. We've been called to go to remind the world of this. And as a church, what we've done is we've stood outside and maybe prayed it down from heaven, prayed it down from God, but it's in us, springing up, waiting to be revealed. There are families without purpose. There are marriages without passion. There are businesses without direction. There are communities without hope. There are people who've had injustice inflicted on them, and they are the ones who are waiting for someone to remind them that this is not all that they were made for. That God in heaven has crafted for them a divine vision that makes them fully alive as they find his heart for them. And you and I, as the church, as those who are meant to be part of the party, part of that celebration, part of that ongoing, continual experience of his overflowing love, are called to invite others and remind them that there is more. There's more to it than they believed. There's more to it than they expected. And the question mark over all these stories, as much detail as we can pull out, the question mark ends with those who think they're on the inside. Those they think they have it, and saying, are you really in the party? Are you really close to the heart? Because if you are, you wouldn't be grumbling about the others. If you are, then you wouldn't be seeing them as something less than you. You'd be dancing and toasting and raising a glass to every single one who encounters what you have. Because that's what God's like. He's like the one who will go out and carry home those who wander. He's like the one who goes and diligently searches for those who've been lost. He's like the one who waits expectantly and full of hope for those to return. And he's like the father who will even plead and reason with the stubborn older brother who counts himself out. He wants all to come in. And we as his children are called to reflect that too. To see in others our own humanity, our own lostness, to see others through the lens of grace that we've come to see ourselves through, the favour that we've been shown. And to go with this in mind, to go with this mindset. Today I just hope, I just pray, I just desire, I was going to say for you to know the celebration and love of God, but I want to be not selfish, but I want to know it for me, because if I know it for me, I know I'll share it with you. If I experience it for myself, then I know that I'll communicate it to you. If I can sense it for me, the delight of the Father who celebrates in such an exuberant way over me who has been found, that the angels of heaven delight and set off the party poppers over one who comes back. He does that over me. If I can get that for me, then I know I'll share it with you. When you're close to the heart of God, you can then reveal the heart of God to others. So with this in mind, we go now into the world, into our places where we've been sent for such a time as this. We go there saying, Father, help us to release this goodness to the people in our time. Give us wisdom and revelation into who you are and what you've given us, so that it utterly changes who we are and what we're here for. Lord, give us insight into your heart and help us give ourselves to it wholeheartedly without fear or hesitation. Lord, give us the audacity to believe these things for ourselves. And then give us the wisdom and the insight as we share with others, treating them as the one, treating them as the precious lost children that they are, treating them with the humanity and the dignity and honour that bestows them, because they're made in your image. And particularly at this time when there are so many questions and so many issues that have been raised. There's so much we can't do. And so much that we can, but we're unsure of the solution or where it will lead. But give us this heart, Father. Give us this vision. Help us see them as you clearly do, Jesus. Help us treat them as you clearly do. And may we never forget for ourselves to join the party. Fill us with that joy now. Fill us with that sense of celebration. Fill us with that humility that so much fuss would be made over me, over us. May we walk with a sense of you who embraces us, who kisses us, who holds us close and brings us home. I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Can I stand before your maker, full of wonder, full of fear? Can behold his power and glory, yet with confidence draw near? For the one who holds the heavens and commands the stars above is the God who bends to bless us with an unrelenting love. Rejoice, come and lift your hands and raise your voice. He is worthy of all praise. Rejoice, sing the mercies of your King, and with trembling rejoice. We are children of the promise, the beloved of the Lord, one with everlasting kindness, bought with sacrificial blood, bringing reconciliation to a world that longs to know the affections of a Father who will never let them go. Rejoice, come and lift your hands and raise your voice. He is worthy of all praise. Rejoice, sing the mercies of your King, and with trembling rejoice. All our sickness, all our sorrows, Jesus carried up the hill. He has walked this path before us. He is walking with us still, turning tragedy to triumph, turning agony to praise. There is blessing in the battle, so take heart and stand amazed. Rejoice, when you cry to him, he hears your voice. He will wipe away your tears. Rejoice, in the midst of suffering, he will help you sing. Rejoice, come and lift your hands and raise your voice. He is worthy of all praise. Rejoice, sing the mercies of your King, and with trembling rejoice.
Bye everyone.
Bye, everyone.